Well, if you don't like it, you can get the hell out. It's time for another non-argument. This is one that I call, if you don't like it, get out. It's one that I see a little bit more from the right in the United States than I do from the left, but I see it on both sides. And I even saw it recently from Mike Ditka, coach of the Bears, talking about Colin Kaepernick and his particular form of protest. And the reason that this is a non-argument is because it just doesn't engage with arguments at all. It is completely a non-argument. It is like a non sequitur. I would call it a variation of a non sequitur. So what it is you're basically saying there's no discussion, there's no counter argument to be made. I don't have to engage with any of the points you made. Simply things are the way they are. The thing that I said is true, and if you don't like that, then you can vamoose, you can leave, you can get the hell out. And before I dig into like all the circumstances that I see surrounding this particular non-argument, is it ever valid to say this? And I think there are some circumstances where it is actually valid to say this, even though in those circumstances it's still not an argument. So if you go into a burger joint, a place that serves burgers, and you go up to the counter and you're like, I'd like 2 tacos, please. And they say, we serve hamburgers, we actually don't serve tacos. And you say, well, I would really like 2 tacos. And they say, well, that's great, but what we serve here is hamburgers. We are happy to make hamburgers for you, but we don't make tacos. And you're like, listen, making tacos is a really good idea. If you look at the demographics around here, there's a lot of Mexican immigrants, there's a lot of Hispanic people. If you're making tacos, I think you're going to make more money. And the person who owns the taco or owns the hamburger place can just say, well, what we do is we make hamburgers. Now, if you don't want hamburgers, then you don't have to eat here. You can leave. If you don't like it, you can leave. And that is actually like a totally valid response. The person who owns the burger joint doesn't have to explain to a random person why he doesn't want to make tacos. It's his business and he can decide how he wants to do it. But the thing is, that particular story that I invented there has people that are acting in a voluntary relationship. You've chosen to walk into the restaurant. You can choose to leave at any time. If you don't like the circumstances of what's being presented to you at the restaurant, you don't have to engage in a purchase. If you don't like the prices, you can leave. You can do the same thing. You sit down in a restaurant. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I certainly have. You open up the menu, you look at the prices, you look at the food, you're like, man, I just don't want to pay that. I'll leave. And you tell the waiter, like, sorry, we're not going to eat anything. Have a good day. And because it's voluntary. But that does not really end up extending into like affairs of state and country and things like that. I've seen this non-argument used basically to sort of blanketly push anyone who perhaps isn't from the United States out of any sort of political discussion or remove their perspective without having to ever consider the validity of what they have to say, simply because it's not from here. But I've also seen it in a very odd way to try to make a point that taxes are somehow voluntary, and this is a rather weird one, so I'll try to dig into it. So the first way that I see it most common is like somebody says, well, in Sweden they do school this way and it's really good and here's the outcomes, and someone says, well, we are not Sweden, and if you don't like what we do, you can get the hell out, right? Or this country does their welfare system like this. It's like, well, if you don't like it, you can get the hell out. And I think that there's probably very few circumstances where someone can bring in like a perspective from outside the United States and then we can just sort of discount it. One of those, I think, is that if somebody's like advocating the removal of things which really can't be removed, like the First Amendment. I think the First Amendment's been very eroded by a number of things, but like to overturn the First Amendment is like, well, we can't do that. So if you don't like the way the First Amendment is, then you don't like it. There's nothing we can do about it. You can leave if you want to avoid it. That's the only way you can avoid it, is to leave. But that's not most circumstances. Most circumstances, it's just, I don't want to engage with like that point, and I'm just going to like appeal to the tribe and say, this is the way we do it in this tribe, get out. Now, the taxation thing is a very interesting one because I've seen this actually on this channel. People say, hey, taxation is voluntary because you are free to leave. So if you don't like it, get the hell out. If you don't like taxation, you are free to leave. And first of all, it's a non-argument because you're not engaging with any sort of argument. So if I make an argument, taxation is immoral and it's not voluntary because I didn't choose to be taxed. I didn't agree to be taxed. It's being forced on me. If I choose not to pay tax, then I'm jailed, right? So taxation is not voluntary. This is like a usually a pretty basic concept, but people sometimes do a lot of sort of logical gymnastics to try to avoid that reality, because it's unpleasant to deal with the reality of things. Some things are not voluntary, and they're unpleasant. So the idea is like, hey, if you don't like taxes, if you think taxes are bad or you think they're immoral, rather than engaging with you on that moral argument, I'm going to tell you to get the hell out. And the truth is, you can't just get the hell out of the United States if you don't like being taxed. There's a thing called expatriation taxes. So if you don't like, you're like, man, I'm fed up with the taxes in the United States, I'm going somewhere else. It's like, great. If you go somewhere else without renouncing your citizenship, you still have to pay tax to the United States government. And if you go somewhere and then you renounce your citizenship, you have to pay tax based on the value of everything you ever owned in the United States, whether you sold it or not. You end up having to pay tax on it, and you have to pay additional fees. If you come back, like let's say you immigrate somewhere, you renounce your citizenship, you become a citizen of another country, and then you come back for 31 days, and this is actually in, I think, the IRS code, then the government says, well, great, now you're one of us again, and now you owe 10 years worth of taxes to us as if you've lived here the whole time. So if you come back and visit your family for a month, because other countries have 6 weeks of vacation a year, you come back and guess what? Now it's like you're an American citizen, even though you don't get to vote, and you get to pay us all the money. That is if another country allows you to immigrate to it, because unlike the United States, most other countries, at least the countries where you might want to go, actually enforce their immigration laws and don't pass out their citizenship very willy-nilly. In other countries, you can't become a citizen. You can be a legal resident, but they'll only give out citizenship to people who are naturally born there, that are of that particular country. You don't get to be a citizen of some other countries. So that option of renouncing your U.S. citizenship and becoming, I don't know, a Malaysian citizen, I don't know the laws in Malaysia, but that's probably not going to happen if they let you immigrate there. You can't just I'm going to pack my bags and leave the United States. You're not free to go. You have to fill out the visas. You have to do all that stuff. If you're trying to do it and the IRS thinks that you're doing it for tax avoidance purposes, which means you have any value assets in the United States, then they're not going to approve your visa and you can't immigrate. So you are not free to leave the United States. It's actually not that easy to immigrate out of the United States. The federal government wants to follow you, and any country that they have an extradition treaty with, if you don't pay the tax to them, then they'll ship you back to the United States and jail you for leaving, right? So at a certain point, this is maybe this is just a slight diversion, you'll realize we've crossed over the threshold into totalitarianism when our presidential candidates are wanting to build a wall with Mexico, not to keep the Mexicans out, but to keep us in. And there's already a lot of walls that are built up to keep Americans inside. United States has I think probably the largest amount of laws of any country that I know of, maybe in the world. I'm hesitant to make that claim, but from what I've seen, it has a huge amount of laws regarding expatriation, has the most attempt to gain money from its foreign citizens. There's only one other country in the world that taxes citizens abroad, and I don't remember what country it is, but the United States is one of two that taxes citizens abroad. So if you go somewhere else, you're still paying taxes to the U.S. government, or you're getting extradited back to go to jail. If you renounce your citizenship, you're still paying taxes to the United States government, and that's if a country will allow you to immigrate to it. And of course, the reality is, even if you immigrate there, there's still taxes, right? Other countries have taxes. Unless you just build a floating island in the middle of the Atlantic, you're not avoiding taxes. So even under that argument, there is no such thing as avoidable tax. You can't voluntarily choose to just walk away from a place that taxes you. But it's an interesting argument, and I've seen a lot of people make it, and a lot of people on the right that have lots of very freedom-minded thoughts towards policies, but when it comes to taxation, it's they can't get over that hurdle and just admit that taxes are quite wicked, or taxes are immoral, or they're an immoral act because they're identical to theft. So that's a really, really interesting one. The other thing about it too is that, just like with Colin Kaepernick, to give somebody that thing, if you don't like it here, then leave, is basically to say that they have no right to attempt to change the country that they were born into. Colin Kaepernick is an American. He was born here. what's the problem with him wanting to improve his country from his perspective, right? We all want things to get better. It's called progress, and not that I'm a progressive, but we all want things to get better. We want our dishwasher to work better. We want our phone to work better. We want society to be more peaceful and healthy. In a lot of ways, we are still progressing. You're watching me on the internet, which is amazing when you stop and think about it. But if you really believe that if someone doesn't like it that they should leave, then what you're basically saying is no one has a right to alter anything about the circumstances that they were born into, because they somehow have to immigrate. And if they're not immigrating, then they're automatically saying that they're willing to accept the circumstances that they were born into. And of course, the if you don't like it, leave argument is not consistent. It's not consistent at all. So if you said that with taxes, then you could say it about anything. Well, I'm an abolitionist. If we go back to, 1850, I'm an abolitionist, and I think slavery is immoral. It's like, well, here in South Carolina, we have slavery, and if you don't like it, you may leave. Okay, it's like, wait, you've just avoided the argument of whether slavery is moral and what we should do about it. You avoided the discussion, and you said, if you don't like it, leave. You could even go a step further and say slavery is voluntary because there's no walls on the plantation, right? It's like, well, there's no walls. There's nothing physical stopping him. I mean, the slave could just walk off the plantation. So clearly he wants to be there, right? No, it's not consistent, right? And the slavery one might be like one step a little further, but it's not a consistent argument. It doesn't hold water for anything else. I think women should vote. Well, here in America, women don't vote. You're voluntarily here where they don't vote, and if you don't like it, you can leave to where women can vote. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way, right? It's not a good, consistent argument because it's not an argument. It doesn't engage with any kind of argument, and only in very, very limited circumstances can you really say that, and it's totally like true and okay. So anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see and what you want to hear in the comments down below. And please, if you like what I do regularly on this channel, please consider buying one of my books. They are down below. Prophet of the God Seed came out recently. That's my little sci-fi book. It's a good quick read, and it's 99 cents. You can also pick up my other book, Muramasa Blood Drinker. And if you don't have any money and you still want to engage with what I do, check out dvspress.com. That's my fiction website. I have a lot of free stuff up there. It's updating all the time. Prophet of the God Seed was free on there for a while, as was Muramasa Blood Drinker. So please do check me out on one of those things. Follow me on Twitter or whatever else. And I always appreciate the conversations that you initiate here on the channel. Please have a great, great day, and I will see you next time.